Okay, members, good morning. Sorry I come in a bit late. There's just some housekeeping stuff first, if I may. So could I welcome everyone to the Governance and Audit and Standards Committee meeting. I am Councillor Madden, Chair of the committee. I'd like to draw your attention to the following. Housekeeping. If a continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public galleries with the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. Please assemble the Queen Victoria statue in front of the civic offices. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust Fire Marshal regulations, if you signed into the Guildhall, please remember to sign out when you leave the building after today's meeting. Live web stream. I draw everyone's attention to the fact that this meeting will be live streamed and the camera zooms in to show the speaker. This is linked to the microphones, therefore can I please remind all attendees to turn their microphones on to speak and then off again once they have finished speaking. Members of the public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. Please be advised that the public seating area is not in view of the camera used to webcast this meeting. Now I'm going to ask members and officers to introduce themselves. I'll start with Scott.
It's Councillor Scott Peter Harris, Hillsey Ward. I'm standing in for Councillor Benedict Swan.
Councillor Daniel Weems for Hillsey Ward, Vice Chair of the committee.
Dave Ashmore, Councillor for Fratton.
Councillor Stuart Brown, also for Fratton.
Yeah, I'm Councillor Lee Hunt, and I'm the Cabinet Member for Planning Policy and City Development.
Peter.
Peter Bell, City Solicitor.
Ian.
James Harris, Senior Local Democracy Officer.
And Ian Maguire, Assistant Director for Planning and Economic Growth.
Okay, we have apologies for absence today from two members, Councillor Judith Smythe and Councillor Ben Swan, and of course Councillor Scott Harris, Peter Harris is here in her place. So those are the apologies. Item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any interest for any members to declare? No? Okay.
Chair, if I may, Chair, sorry.
Where are you?
Just here. Obviously, this relates to an issue of the Scrutiny Management Panel, of which I was a member and yourself was a member. I just think it would be prudent to, and Councillor Brown as well, it would just be prudent to make that declaration now that obviously we made a decision at Scrutiny Management Panel and obviously now we're reconsidering it here at GNS.
I'm not sure that's a declaration.
It's a declaration of just being transparent.
Yeah. It's confirmation. It's just confirmation, yeah. Okay, well you've confirmed that some of us were there for a very exciting meeting. Item 3 then is referral by the Cabinet Member for Planning Policy and City Development, options for increasing planning committee capacity. And I'm going to read this out. It's in the minutes, but at the request of the Cabinet Member of Planning Policy and City Development, the Governance and Audit Standards Committee is invited to consider and make comments on the process and principles of the decision taken by him on the 26th of July 2022 in respect of the report Options for Increasing Planning Committee Capacity, which was subsequently called in. Now, I have to repeat this, and I had this in my own notes anyway. This is not a decision item for the committee. The usual deputation process does not apply. However, the Cabinet Member did ask to come along to make a deputation today, and I have agreed to that. So the Cabinet Member will speak to the committee and hopefully answer questions if there are any for members. Is that okay? All right. Yeah, well, we'll have the deputation then.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I didn't want to have you just come and consider the report without paying you the respect of coming along and explaining a bit more. And as Councillor Scott Peter Harris has said, I think 3 members today were at the last committee, but for those that weren't there, very briefly, for a long time now, members have been complaining, rightfully in my view, that planning matters have been taken too long to be decided. The administration has gone to great lengths to work with the planning team in order to reduce that backlog, both in delegated decisions and in making decisions at the planning committee, which is really where the hold-up is now. between January and May of this year, planning officers were tasked to focus entirely on getting delegated decisions out, which is what they did, and that backlog has been reduced significantly. Subsequent to that, when I took over the portfolio, it was very clear to me. We even had the member for Portsmouth North coming here and telling us off basically for not making decisions more quickly. And indeed, I listened to representations from all around the council chamber and sent to me by email from members of the public that their planning decisions were being held up for too long. And there's no way that any of us can not agree with those people. So I set out with the officers to look at this matter to see what could be done. And there's some very sensible things, for example, the 1,000 square metre where 1,000 square metres where a planning application for 1,000 square metres or more has to come to the planning committee regardless. Even if there's no deputations, it still has to come to the planning committee. So we have changed that and are changing that, particularly when there are because there are no deputations generally. So that will quicken things up. And according to the report from July, 26th of July, that decision alone reduces the planning committee by 1 full rotation. The other thing that I did, Mr. Chairman and members, was to move the rotation of planning committees. I did that previously in my previous role, chair of the planning committee, from 4 weekly rotations to 3 weekly rotations. And I did push officers a lot, asking them if they could hurry that up even more. But the consistent advice I had from legal and democratic services and planning officers, there was not the capacity in any of those places in order to increase the number of meetings of the planning committee to 2 weekly cycles, which has been pushed by some members of the council. So there we are. We were looking at it closely. The other thing that people were saying is, well, increase the number of planning officers. Well, that's much easier said than done because planning officers are very hard to come by. They need training and they need resources put behind them too. So democratic services would, if we were going to go to those 2 weekly cycle as a result of employing more planning officers, it wouldn't kick in straight away. Democratic services would have to increase capacity, so too would legal services. And the planning bill alone for more planning officers would be in the region of about £115,000, and then the subsequent legal and democratic services funding as well. So we looked at the ways that officers were making decisions. We looked at how we could reduce that, and we noted that lots of councils in this area, Winchester, Southampton, so on, you would have to have 6 representation or 5 representations before a item could be triggered to come to the planning committee. So I looked at that. A report was prepared. The chair of the planning, because there was criticism at the last committee by 1 or 2 members that I did not consult the planning committee. Well, I did consult the chair because she was my opposite number. And also, of course, Councillor Brent is the Conservative opposition spokesperson on the portfolio. I would have assumed that in this cabinet-style local government that we have, that they would have cascaded the information to their members. I don't know whether they did or they did not, but, you know, that is the normal way of, I think, of consultation through the cabinet style of local government. So a report came and I made the decision. I looked at what Councillor Hugh Mason had done. He had referred it to gas, but I saw that they had agreed with him, and I balanced. And members agreed with me that it was members decided it was a fine judgment on the constitutional issue, which is why you're here today, and I'm sorry about the extra work. But it was a fine balance, a grey area on the constitutional issue. But on balance, I had looked at it and I decided that the advantage of getting people's planning decisions and the economic benefit to them and to the city outweighed the any adverse impact by raising the trigger from 3 to 6. Unfortunately, some members did not agree. Those who have been complaining the loudest didn't agree, and they called the decision in on a constitutional matter, which I've described already, and we had the meeting at the Scrutiny Management Panel. Members, I honestly believe, and I mean this, that the compromise offered by your Chair, Councillor Madden, at that committee was the correct one, which was to refer it to the Constitutional Working Party or Committee, so you could have agreed, so the SNP could have agreed or gone along with the meeting last time, and people's planning applications being heard much quicker already. But it's now 4 months delay already. By the time I get to hear this in about a week and a half's time in November. So there was a way forward last time, but for whatever reason, it was the Chair used his casting vote to bring it to you today. It's fair, I don't mind, but it's just more delay for people. But as I say, we could have been in a much happier place by now for those people waiting for their planning applications to be decided for all sorts of good reasons. So that compromise was there last time, but it was decided to bring it to you. So it's now got to come back to me, and I hope very much, members, that you'll look at what's happened and that you'll support my thinking, the policy of moving the trigger up from 3 to 6. I would say too that I have been under pressure to curb members' powers. That would be a power grab, which was described by Councillor Atkins. This isn't a power grab, it's ridiculous. It's just about improving things for people in the planning system. It's not a power, but some members, the Chair of Planning wants me to change things so that 3 members from a ward or 3 members of a political party, which is completely unconstitutional, would have to come together and agree that a matter should come to committee. That's where you use your power, your right to bring a matter to committee. And I'm mindful of this, and I raise it because I very much hope that members don't try and if we decide to go ahead, or if I can make that decision in early November about moving the trigger up from 3 to 6, I hope that members don't suddenly decide to start circumnavigating that by looking at MIS and then referring everything they possibly can to the planning committee. That would be seen for what it was, and I would make a fuss about it. So I hope that that doesn't happen, but I don't want to go down the line of curbing members' rights to bring a matter to the planning committee. I've just headed that up for you because that is a real constitutional issue that would need to be looked at. I think that I have covered everything. If I haven't, I apologise. There were some things that said at the last Scrutiny Management Pack which were inaccurate, which I put right there and then, but 3 of you were there, so you would have heard that. All right, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much indeed for giving me this opportunity today.
Okay, thank you very much. Could I just on the constitutional bit, because I've revisited this mainly for Peter, because in fact I did it this morning. It's not very exciting for me. And I'm also reading the 2000 Local Government Act for the constitutional bit. But what it does say in Constitution Part 2, Section 2 on page 1, I do sound like a lawyer, don't I? Regulatory framework. And this is for the Governance and Audit Committee, and it says, 1, to consider amendments to the Council's constitution and to make sure recommendations to the Council, such recommendations to the Council may be necessary. Now that says to me that the matter should have come here in the first place.
Potentially, yes. That's not unreasonable.
What I'm saying, it should have come. A lot of the delay has been because it didn't come to here in the first place.
Yeah, that was essentially a judgment call. The previous way of dealing with it, we did straight to you, and you went back to the relevant portfolio member having dealt with the review. Yeah, this is entirely needing a look at, which is what I allude to in the report, Councillor, for the simple reason that it is not clear one way or the other, realistically. The easier option would have been to come to gas first rather than Councillor Hunt. That's no criticism, it's just merely an observation of how we've done it before.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just saying that my reading of that is it should have come here anyway. And not it should have been, whoever the cabinet member is doing constitutional change had no right not to refer to here.
That's essentially a judgment call on the deck, but, it would have been easier, I agree, but I do not make any criticism for the fact that it is moved from one place to another.
Okay, anyway, I've written to you about the need to look at it in the Constitution, and I've got some amendments to that. I have a few questions, but I'll leave them for the minute. Any questions or comments? And that's all it is. There's no recommendations coming from us today. It's just to say to the Cabinet member, consider this, or I'm happy with this, or not happy with that, or whatever. You know the setup. It's a strange setup. We had 27, it was September last year, wasn't it, when we got the original one to move from 1 to 3. The Cabinet member didn't come here then. And that was unanimous with the information in front of us at that stage. So, as I said, three of us were actually at the SNP meeting. Did I see Councillor Peter Harris? Did you have your hand up?
I did, yes, but I can wait. Oh, thank you. No, it's just more some comments. There's no real questions because just on a couple of points. Councillor Hunt made reference to the fact that we could have gone to the Constitutional Working Group straight away. That wouldn't have been the case because the decision from SNP is a binary decision. You either take action or you don't, and that is the nature of the decision we were making. So SNP had a choice. Scrutiny Management Panel, for those at home, had a choice of whether to refer the decision back to this body or not to take any action, and it chose to refer the decision back. So there was no opportunity to take it to the Constitutional Working Group. Although I do agree that would have been a good idea if we'd have been able to do that and the option was on the table. And I think it's going to be looked at in some detail now as well about scheme of delegations, because I think there is some real grey area around this. On the process of the decision, you're absolutely right, Chair. It should have come here first, and then it could have been dealt with a lot quicker. I think that the problem the council have is with the constitutional document that we work from at the moment is not. I mean, I've stated this in full council before. It's not up to task. We need to really look at that document and ensure that we strengthen the Constitution, but also look at the scheme of delegation and how the scheme of delegations work. Because at the moment, the scheme of delegations is very woolly. It's not very prescriptive. You can interpret it how you like, and I think that doesn't give us any real means to make proper decisions, and we can call ourselves into more scrutiny. The process of this is fine. I think Councillor Hunt's been pragmatic. I'm quite happy with the report now as it goes forward, and I think it's given people ample opportunity to make comments. So we're here, we are where we are, and I think we should just let the Cabinet member make his decision.
Okay, thank you. Any other members? Sorry, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of comments and one question. I'll start with a question, if I may, Councillor Hunt. Obviously, you make reference on quite a lot of occasions to the threshold for members of the public having something called in being raised from 3 till 6. I see on page 15 of our report packs that the call-ins under paragraph 57 for 3 or more adverse representations numbered 51. Are you able to tell us how many of those 51 were of 6 or higher, and essentially give us some indication of the impact that the decision will have in terms of the number of cases being taken off of automatic calling?
All right. In the report, the original report, it talks about 56 being member requests, if I remember rightly. But
I think we've got here 56 was the number for members' requests, yeah. 51 for 3 or more adverse representations.
Okay. Sorry, are you talking about paragraph 51? Because I'm looking at the...
No, I was asking about paragraph 57. So
3 or more adverse representations.
Page 15.
All right, okay. So on that one, I don't think it's that many, quite frankly. However, at the last committee, there was, I am informed, I didn't watch it, but I am informed that there were 3, and that the members there were concerned because the councillors calling him didn't even show up and didn't give any reason for calling them in. So otherwise, they would have been decided under officers' delegated powers. So members really need to be mindful of this. You know, if you're going to you put your money where your mouth is. If you're going to call it in, come along and explain why.
Sorry, just to be clear, I wasn't asking about members' call-ins. I was asking about public call-ins where the increase from 3 to 6 had effect.
I don't know. You've got the planning officer here, and he will probably be able to answer that question.
Ian, is that something you're able to answer?
If that's right, Mr. Chair.
The proportion of call-ins for under those terms which should be affected by the change?
Chairman, if you wish, just to be absolutely clear, though, that 51 is just a sample at a time. Looking at my list, it's the 6th of July. That was, of those 51, if you move from 3 to 6, 24 would be able to be determined under delegated, 27 were 7 plus out of the 51.
So it's taking about half the workload from call-ins from the public out of the planning committee's
public, that's right. The
list of work.
Indeed, Councillor Brown, but you will be mindful too, as am I, that there is the standing instruction that all HMOs come to the planning committee. That is a frustration for the senior planning officer who doesn't agree with it, and I have some sympathy for that view in some cases, but on the other hand too, there are some that have come that have been rejected for planning reasons.
Fantastic, thank you. And a couple of comments I had, very similar to Councillor Peter Harris. I can see that the aspiration of making this change is made with the right reasons. We're looking to clear the backlog, and that is a good goal to have. And likewise, I think the issues about the constitutional matter not having given you enough information in the first instance, the fact that it's come through SNP and now to gas has definitely given adequate information around that constitutional matter. The issues about the constitution being woolly in some areas, if memory serves from the last SNP meeting, Mr Balfe did say that in some instances having it too defined would give us too much of a restriction in some areas. So I think certainly if the Constitutional Working Group are looking at who's allowed to do what, where and when, they need to bear in mind that sometimes a little bit of flexibility is required, but we do need a little more clarity on who is allowed to do what, where, when and how.
Yeah, I agree. Unfortunately, we operate the cabinet-style local government, and I think that is going to bring clashes with the constitutional. The idea of cabinet-style local government is making fast, quick decisions to benefit the population. So I made a decision on balance, so here we are again today.
Okay, Stuart.
That's all from me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Williams-Daniel.
It's not really a question, it's just a comment, just from what Councillor Lee Hunt just said there. I appreciate that some decisions have to be quick and have to be fast, but I would say in this instance, taking a little bit longer would have been a bit more prudent in that sense, that you would have had the effective information. And I appreciate what Councillor Brown has said about trying to get rid of the backlog. I think if we do increase it to 6, which I appreciate Councillor Hunt is against, yes, it would help officers, but it wouldn't help residents. So I would just say in my own comment, just to keep it to 3 and keep it the way it is.
I don't think Councillor Hunt's against the 6. That's what he's here.
No, I'm not.
No, I know he's not. I'm just saying it was raised earlier.
No, I think it's very important that we want to reduce the back. We had Penny Morden here telling us that it needed to be reduced. That's just what the effect of this policy will do. It will. Of course, it will help officers, but more importantly, it will help them to make decisions faster for the people that you and others represent.
No, I appreciate that, but like what you just said, Councillor Hunt, for example, in the case of HMOs, if we make them too fast and too quickly, there'll be those HMOs that pass through the barrier which aren't adequate. So I would say speed isn't always necessarily a good thing. It's just my opinion. It's not necessarily a criticism.
Let's be very, very clear. HMOs, the situation around HMOs is not changing. Every single HMO is coming to the planning committee. So I wouldn't want you to go away thinking
I'm not
that we're speeding up HMO applications, because I've seen the hyperbole around those, and I wouldn't want them.
No. I appreciate that. It was just an example. I understand that every HMO comes before the committee, but it's more that there may be another application that gets seen really quickly, which may not necessarily have the level of detail given to it that perhaps that HMOs are within the city.
Well, greatest respect, last go, Mr. Chair and Councillor, that planning officers do very long reports on every single item. They have to consult a lot of people, which is part of the delay. A few years back, they wouldn't have had all these consultees ranging around green issues and around heating and light and all this. So the reports you get are very clear. If you've got an issue with an application, when the MIS list comes out, the contact number for and the emails there for the officer. When I was in your position on the planning committee, if I had an issue with a planning application, I would ring the officer, and very often the issue got ironed out, and I was able to go back and explain to the resident rather than use my right to bring it to the committee. And say, if you do that, I think there's an expectation that the councillor would come to the committee and make it very clear as to why he or she has used that particular right.
I know, I respect that, and I wouldn't say it's not necessarily always the job of the councillor to go through every application, because obviously officers have that expertise. But what I would say in terms of speed, there are occasions where an application is brought before the planning committee and then it's corrected on the day of the planning committee. I know that Mr. Maguire has done that, where he's given, when an application comes before the committee, he'll say, especially with HMOs, oh, actually this measurement here is actually wrong. It's meant to be this one, but they correct it on the day. So I do think bringing some applications before the committee is beneficial for residents and for that transparency. I obviously don't want to go into a further debate because it's taking up your time, Councillor, but I do appreciate you coming here today, and I do think in terms of the scenario for the future, and Mr. Wolf has alluded to that, perhaps we can bring it to gas first and foremost, and then we wouldn't have to have this rigmarole where it goes before S&P and then comes back before gas.
The only thing I would say, Mr. Chairman, is be careful what you wish for.
Okay, so I think the main point you were making was you preferred to stay at 3 rather than go up to 6. Yeah? Daniel, thank you. No, well, this is not a decision-making item. Comments have been made. The cabinet member will or will not take them on board as he sees fit, and he will return to deliberate on what we've said, and that's it for us. Thank you very much, members. Thank you.